I'm going to mention this again at the end, but we will have an opportunity for you to share feedback and evaluation, as well as to let us know what webinars you want to hear about in the future. Thank you, Bethany, for typing in the information on CARET. All right, so a little bit of background on the AEBG TAP, the Technical Assistance Project. This is a project that was recently funded by the Adult Education Block Grant Office out of the Chancellor and Department of Education. And the Sacramento County Office of Education is the lead contractor on this project, and they're working with several partners, one of which is the American Institute for Research, and we are also working with CASAS and OTAN. This webinar is one that's put on by the American Institute for Research. And just a little bit of background about us. We are an international organization whose mission is really to conduct and apply the best quality behavioral and social science research and evaluation possible that can work and focus toward improving the lives of people and really focusing on improving the lives of the disadvantaged. And so all of our work is in alignment with this mission and this goal, as the AEBG TAP program and project seeks to provide support across the state of California for programs that receive the Adult Ed Block Grant funding who serve this population. You'll see that this work is in alignment with our mission. So what we are doing specifically at AIR in terms of the AEBG TAP project is we are providing technical assistance and professional development. We are able to provide technical assistance on request and encourage you to reach out and contact and use the Adult Education Block Grant webpage to submit requests if you need support and technical assistance. And then we are really trying to build the capacity of consortiums by offering effective instruction in all of the 7 program areas, making sure that we help you support work that aligns what you're offering and the services that you have for your students in a seamless manner so that they can successfully transition to college and career, and that we are providing support along the way for your adult learners related to their college and career preparations or aspirations. And then finally, we are seeking to help consortiums continue to build and develop exemplary leaders, build leadership capacity within consortium. So this is the 3rd webinar that we have offered in support of that goal and in support of that mission. And we've offered one on collaborative professional development as well as on accelerated learning, and this one is focused on leveraging resources. And so what you'll see here is our plan for the session. We have about 90 minutes or so for the webinar today, and we hope to give you an overview and some background on leveraging resources, sharing a little bit of the differences between blending and braiding, and helping you think about ways in which you want to consider implementing opportunities to leverage resources. And then we're going to share some resources and tools that will help you do that. Following that, we're going to hear from 2 experts in the field who have demonstrated their strengths and abilities to really leverage resources well. And so you'll hear program perspectives from the School of Continuing Education at North Orange County Community College District, and then you'll hear from an adult school, Huntington Beach Adult School, and they'll both be sharing experiences that they've had, the good and the bad, with leveraging resources, as well as showing examples so that you can get ideas of things that you might be able to replicate or offer at your program and within your consortium. Then we'll have the opportunity to have some closing questions and talk about what's next and get your thoughts on things that we might do next in terms of future webinars too. With that, I want to introduce our wonderful presenters today. We have 3, as you've heard from earlier. We are going to start with hearing from Alexandra Dane, who's from the Spark Policy Institute. Alex is a senior consultant with Spark Policy Institute, and for over a decade he's been working on community development, program design, strategic planning, and project management. And he is joining us from Denver, Colorado. And you'll see from his presentation that a lot of his work and research is in the area of collective impact and the framework related to collective impact that really seeks to build on the partnerships and the variety of stakeholders who we need to collaborate with for success and initiatives. And he's also worked at the federal level and done a lot around partnerships at the international level as well. So we're excited to have Alex join us and share our overview on leveraging resources. We also have with us today Steve Curiel, who is the principal at Huntington Beach Adult School. He has been involved and worked in adult education for over 16 years in administration, and during that time he's been able to manage and lead all of the variety of program areas offered in adult education. He's been the principal at Huntington Beach Adult School for 7 years, and they serve about 7,000 students. But many of you may also know him through his leadership roles in the state. He is presently the president of the California Council for Adult Education and also sits on the board as the Orange County representative for the AXA Adult Education Council. So we are going to hear from Steve shortly. And then, of course, Ms. Valentina Portel, who is the provost for the School of Continuing Education at North Orange County Community College District. She's been there since 2002, and prior to serving as provost, she was the Dean of Instructional and Support and Student Services. Valentina has also served on a number of state-level boards. She's been serving on the board for the Association of Community and Continuing Education, ACE, since 2011, and she's also served on the California Community College Chancellor's Office Institutional Effectiveness Partnership Initiative, as well as on the California Department of Education's Field Partnership Team. So as you see, we have wonderful presenters with a varied background to share with you their experiences on leveraging resources. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Alex Dane, who's going to get us started with the overview. So Alex, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sharice. Happy to be on the webinar today. Today we're going to be covering leveraging resources and what that is, and primarily within the terms of blending and braiding. First, let's take a poll of the audience and try and understand what the current level and knowledge is about blending and braiding. Looking at the spectrum from I have a basic understanding to I'm familiar with a specific blending and braiding model, or I am involved with the financial side of blending and braiding model, or I am an expert on blending and braiding. We'll give the audience a few minutes to respond to this. And as the results are coming in, it looks like the majority of the audience on today's webinar has a basic understanding of what blending and braiding is. And that'll be good for today's overview and concept of what the blending and braiding framework is and what it can provide. So let's jump into understanding what that is. So the terms blending and braiding are frequently used and often together, and generally with little definition. However, they refer to two different approaches to fiscal coordination. Blending funding involves commingling funds into one pot, where school administrators, case managers can draw down service dollars or programmatic dollars for personnel expenses that can be paid, or where program needs can be met. In contrast, braided funding involves multiple funding streams to pay for all the services needed by a certain population of a school, with careful accounting of how every dollar from each funding stream is spent. Let's jump into the first. What is blending? Blending funding involves commingling funds into one pot, where school administrators and program managers can draw down service dollars, personnel expenses can be paid, or other program needs can be met. Blending funding sources is like your checking account. You may receive funds from a variety of different sources like your paycheck, gifts, money owed, but once it goes into your checking account, it becomes a pool of money that you can draw upon for expenses like rent or mortgage, utilities, or credit card, so you don't have to account for what funding paid for what expense. However, blending is politically challenging to do. You can't tell your funder exactly what their money paid for, but only what outcomes were achieved. So let's take a look at an example. Imagine a higher education, an adult education program cost $1,000 per learner served. If 100 adult learners are served, it needs a budget of $100,000 to be successful. This chart shows how a blended funding model can allow for more adult learners to be served than each funder could have served alone. So each of the different funding streams on the left, funding stream A, funding stream B, and funding stream C, all have different eligibilities, but all adult learners are eligible for multiple programs. So funding stream A is paying for 25 adult learners to be served, but 30 adult learners are eligible for the funding stream will receive the services. Funding stream B is paying for 25 learners to be served, but 50 learners who are eligible for that funding stream will receive services. And funding stream C is paying for 50 learners to be served, but 100 learners who are eligible for that funding stream will receive services. So there's no way to report which funding stream paid for which expense, which can be politically challenging because not all funding streams can be blended. But if your funders are on board, blended funding is less challenging to implement than braided funding. There's less workload as there's less tracking and accountability that happens across all the different funding streams. There's a few tips out there when looking at a blended funding model. First, document the cost of providing services. To prepare for a blended funding model, you must be able to demonstrate the cost of providing these services. In essence, you're creating a case rate for providing those programs and cost of the set of services that you're offering to adult learners through your program. This allows your funders to know what to expect from the funding that they're providing. Using our previous example, funding stream A, B, and C are blended into one pot to pay for the program. All of the learners are eligible for funding stream A, but funding stream A is only picking up 50% of the cost to all the learners. Because of the blended model, the funder can see that their funding is going to support twice as many learners as they provided the money to fund. The second tip is track. Track the eligibility of adult learners and adult participants in your program. If you have multiple funding sources covering all the learners in your program, it's critical to assess the eligibility of every learner served for every funding stream. This is part of how you'll be able to report back the leveraging of your funds to your funders. It will also help you prepare your return the funder to ask for more money when there's a larger number of participants in a specific program, and it lets you convey what the bang for their buck is in terms of funding. The third tip is measure. Measure the outcome of your service in your program. In a traditional model, a funder knows exactly where their money went and can feel good about the detailed services provided to a clearly defined set of adult learners participating in a program. However, in a blended model, the funder loses that quote-unquote widget counting level of detail. So by evaluating the outcomes of your program, you're replacing those widgets with equally hard data, as well as providing data that helps the funder to understand what their funding accomplished, not just what their funding paid for. The other model between blending and braiding is braiding. So in contrast, braided funding involves multiple funding streams. used to pay for all of the services in a needed set of students participating in an adult education program with careful accounting of how every dollar from each funding stream is spent. The term braided is used because multiple funding streams are initially separate, but then brought together to pay for more than what one funding stream could support, and then carefully pulled back apart to report to funders on how that money was spent. Often, braided funding is the only option. Federal funding streams require careful tracking of how staff time and expenses are used to ensure that federal funding streams only pay for things directly associated with the intent of that funding. So consequently, when multiple funding streams are paying for a single program or system, the system will need to be carefully designed to allow for sufficient reporting to ensure each funding stream is only paying for activities eligible under that specific funding stream. So what does this look like? Let's look at it from the adult learner perspective. What does the learner in a higher education program, an adult education program experience? As they come to the institution and walk in the door, there's an eligibility check from what's called the front door staff. And at this point, the front door staff does eligibility checks to make sure the adult learner can participate in the program, and does some level of information gathering on who the adult learner is, some of their background, and what services they're interested in. Then services are delivered. The adult learner doesn't see anything other than those services. Because of the braided model, services can be aligned with exactly what the client needs are, and some of those services can be delivered within that higher education program, and sometimes they can be contracted out as well to provide additional services which might be eligible to the adult learner. From the perspective of the behind the scenes and the administration from the higher education, from the adult education administrator and program administrator point of view, this is a graphic of what happens through the braided model. Once those front door checks are made to make sure the client can participate in the program, and there's documentation around those eligibilities, that's stored on the administration side to really document the eligibility and identify any restrictions on allowability as a result of that eligibility for certain services that might be offered to the adult learner. This may be a real change for your staff. Staff is no longer assigning people to specific programs. They're assigning them to the services that the client has helped to identify that they need, and whether those services are within a specific program, within a higher adult education institution, or scattered across a variety of staff or programs and contracts, etc. So as those services are delivered, the back door, so there's the front door and then there's backdoor staff. The backdoor staff works on the financial side of delivering the services and matching funding streams with those specific services. So as those services are delivered, the backdoor staff assigns the services delivered to appropriate funding streams. Some services will be allowed by multiple funding streams, so the backdoor considers other criteria than just allowability. They think about which funding streams are most restrictive in general and try and spend those down first. They consider which funding streams allow for a certain percentage of indirect cost and try and spend those down steadily. Again, this might be a real change for your staff. Fiscal staff have to go with the flow as predefined budgets are a starting place, but actual spend down will vary month to month from the budget based on both client eligibility, allowability of services, and the decisions that are being made behind the scenes. A few tips for braiding. The most important thing to remember with braiding is that each of your funding streams will retain their original requirements and expectations, including tracking and reporting. So you must manage your funds as if they're independent, even though you're using them collectively to support a coordinated set of programs for adult learners. As a braided model might be primarily necessary due to limits on eligible populations and students across different funding streams, it may be necessary due to the limits on the type of services that you can provide under certain funding streams. It's also likely that braided funding models a combination of both of these issues. So before spending any of your funding, it's important to develop what's called a coordinated finance plan that distributes funding appropriately by funding stream and really understanding needs and where that funding is coming from. Another note, to understand audit requirements from certain funders, take the time to meet with auditors before spending any of the funding. And this might be on the auditing side for state, federal agencies, as well as nonprofit and foundation funding as well. Also of note, the braided funding model needs to have a clearly defined decision-making authority and systems around that. You will need to clearly define what populations or adult learners are eligible for certain program services through your model and ensure the front door of your school program knows that eligibility. When an adult learner comes to the front door, that staff assigned to that part of the system needs to be vested with the authority to determine what programs and services can be offered to that specific learner. Finally, the last stage of decision-making is on the back door end, and that's a financial component, which should occur at the back door, not the front door. So after services are provided, you'll need financial staff who can take responsibility for assigning the funding streams that will cover the cost. If your front door is well designed, your back door will never run into a situation where a service has been provided for but cannot be paid for. A few implementation considerations for both blending and braiding. When going through the process to identify what makes the most sense, it's important to go through a process of identifying vision and partners. And it's easy to fall into a trap of designing programs to match funding. Going through an appropriate visioning and partner identification phase really intended to avoid the pitfall of doing that and instead focus on, from the beginning, on what you're trying to accomplish on behalf of adult learners before you start to define specific programs or systems to achieve the overall goals that you want. Depending on the scope of your braiding or blending effort, you could have anything from a small planning group or internal staff, community stakeholders and adult learners community-wide participate in this visioning process of identifying the overall outcome, visions, and partners that need to be at the table. And this is equally as important when an adult education program works towards a vision, but also defines what their core program and services are that lead to achieving that vision. After that, when thinking through implementation, it's key to identify and analyze the various funding streams that are out there. And although this can be intimidating, most funding streams have detailed information available at certain agencies, foundation, community nonprofits that oversee the funding, and they make this information accessible for their recipients. And so you want to undertake a mix of activities to gather sufficient information about that funding stream and meet with your fiscal staff to collect and discuss any documentation you receive from your current funders regarding allowable expenses, documentation of expenses, reporting requirements, and downloading and understanding the fiscal guidance from various funders' websites, all the way from state plans, and thinking through rules, regulations, and statutes of different agency letters. From there, after developing overall vision and intent of the adult learning program you're seeking to fund and provide, to working through what your core services and programs are, to understanding and analyzing the funding stream, one of the last steps of this implementation phase is developing a coordinated financial plan. And this serves multiple purposes. It can be a tool for talking with your funders so they clearly understand the design of your blended or braided system. It can help with your programmatic staff, onboarding fiscal staff, as well as the front door on what the appropriate roles are and where decisions are being made. Then we'll go and take a poll right now of those on the webinar. And we're looking to understand, what would you say your organization is hoping to achieve through leveraging resources, possibly through a blended or a braided model? Is that to grow a program? Does it respond to funding cuts? Or is it to sustain a program? So we'll give a couple minutes here and see what webinar participants think. Okay, the results are coming in right now, and it looks like a pretty even split of 30% across the respondents on here. So that's interesting to note. That is where folks are on thinking through leveraged resources and what they can do for their specific organization. Before jumping into this, or maybe augmenting your process, it is important to note that there are resources out there, so you don't have to go it alone. When you're going through and asking some questions that relate to, have I articulated the scope of my project and what I'm trying to achieve? Have I identified suitable partners? Have I verified sufficient resources will be available to accomplish what I'm trying to achieve? Have I identified potential barriers or challenges to implementation and determined how I can overcome them? Or have I established how I know whether my goals have been achieved? There's guidebooks and there's toolkits out there that can help walk through the blending and braiding toolkit. These are available. Spark Policy, there's a blending and braiding toolkit, free to use, as well as there's another organization, national organization called Accelerating Opportunity, that initiative through what's called Jobs for the Future, and that's at jff.org. And both of these sites and organizations provide step-by-step guides to walking through this process, as well as templates and checklists, and then case studies and resources to understand how other different higher adult learning education institutions have gone through this process of blending and braiding funding resources. Here's a screenshot of how one of these toolkits is providing resources. And again, this is broken into those different elements that we talked about. When you're going through the development of a braided framework or a blended framework, of understanding and identifying vision and partners, defining programs and services, exploring finance options, developing, again, that coordinated financing plan, all the way through implementing and tracking and improving, and some of those case studies and some analyses of funding streams out there. Again, there's resources that you can look at to understand how others have done this and where you can draw some additional resources as well. So that ends it from my component of the webinar. I thank everyone today. Feel free to reach out and find the resources on Spark Policy Institute under the Blending and Braiding Toolkit, or reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions moving forward. And from there, we'll take you to the next phase of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think he said that's a good way to say it, collaboration and cooperation. Perfect. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Alex. And Trudy, we will see if we can get you some more information on the Accelerating Opportunity. Alex, if you have any further information that you want to share with us in that, if you can share that in the presenter chat, and then I see that you typed that there, that will be of value for those who are on the webinar. And Trudy, I think that's what we were mentioning. So I am going to introduce our next presenter, Valentina Portel, who's going to talk us through and share her experiences and examples, real live examples of how her program, the School of Continuing Education, has worked with many partners to collaborate and cooperate to leverage resources. And so Valentina's, her first slide is up, and as you see, it's got a lot of logos there, and I will turn it over to Valentina to let her explain what that is all about. Thanks so much, Valentina, and Alex, thank you as well.
Thank you, Trudy. Good afternoon, everyone. Valentina here. I'm excited to share 2 examples today of resource braiding under the AEBG umbrella. But before I do that, please allow me to introduce our consortium. I'm honored to represent North Orange County Regional Consortium for Adult Education, or as someone recently called us for short, NOCROC. We are a family of 8 members, including 5 K-12 school districts, Orange County Department of Education, North Orange ROP, and North Orange County Community College District, which consists of 3 sister institutions, Cypress College, Fullerton College, and the non-credit entity, School of Continuing Education. So on the slide here, you see a quote. Actually, it's a direct quote from AB 86, Rethinking and Redesigning Adult Education Together. And in our consortium, I have to say we took it to heart, and we actually have been using this quote as our tagline. And as I introduce some of our experiences, I just wanted to remind you that we have a few questions for you under the pod chat. So please take your time. If you have any questions or comments or ideas, we'd love to hear from you. And we have scheduled some time where I'll try to at least respond or comment back. All of the North Orange County Regional Consortium regional plan strategies include braiding of resources of some sort. These could be financial, human, or physical. But today I would like to present 2 particular strategies because they were developed for, I would say, maybe less known AEBG program areas. They're innovative in nature, and they're unique in the way they braid resources. So I will begin with Love and Logic strategy, which was developed in response to the regional needs assessment findings for the AEBG program area number 4, which is programs for adults designed to develop knowledge and skills to assist children to succeed academically in school. Creating nurturing environment at home and at school, as well as providing socio-emotional support to children, was our number 1 need in the region. And after the review of several models, Love and Logic clearly stood out because we thought that this was the most universal curriculum, and it also included some elements of academic success. So in collaboration with Dr. Charles Fay and Parenting with Love and Logic Institute, and Dr. Fay is the author of a famous series of books of the same name, Parenting with Love and Logic. Our community college faculty developed a series of courses and workshops based on the Love and Logic model for parents and educators. Love and Logic tools are being covered in the workshops. And as this slide shows, they include preventing misbehavior and increasing instructional time on task, avoiding power struggle while setting limits, teaching character and responsibility through the application of logical consequences instead of punishment, and developing positive cooperative relationships. So the pilot year for the Love and Logic strategy included 8 workshops, which were attended by 225 participants. And we have recently extended the network of our partners to 3 high school districts, 1 elementary school district, and a community church. The initial outcomes of the Love and Logic strategy are very encouraging. Besides gaining knowledge and practical skills of positive parenting and support of children's academic success, both parents and teachers who participated in the training reported building local networks and support groups. They have also reported increased confidence in both parenting and teaching. The participants' testimonies clearly demonstrated that healthy families and classroom environment lead to building resilience in children, which, as we know, is a high predictor of success, both academically and career-wise. Just a few testimonies and a few kind words from our students. You can see their photos and their quotes on the slide in front of you. The father, who was separated from his wife just 10 months prior to class, whose photo you can see on the slide, reported that after applying love and logic principles, he was able to have an open and meaningful conversation with his boys. And that's for the first time. A mother reported keeping love and logic flashcards conveniently in the glove compartment of her car and using them every time when a conversation with her teenage daughter becomes heated. I think a lot of us can relate. Love and logic strategy would not have been possible without multiple partners. So how did we braid resources to make this specific strategy possible to the adult learners in our region? Well, K-12 members and partner districts, they include an elementary school district, as I mentioned, serve as the recipients of the services. So naturally, they contribute facilities, coordinate outreach to parents and teachers, and they also compensate their teachers for participating in the training. Community College District took the lead in the research for the curriculum. We also provided the teaching faculty and all training materials. The local community church, which recently joined our project, provides childcare for the classes that are being held at their site. We have learned that many of our K-12 members already provide very dynamic parent academies. So Love and Logic is not meant to replace these efforts, but to enhance them. Love and Logic courses are currently in the process of state approval, so we are hoping to braid funding and make it more efficient even further, because once approved, these courses will be offered for community college apportionment, thus freeing up AEBG funds for other strategies in the region. All right, time to hear your thoughts or questions. And if you, let's see, please take your time, share some thoughts on how you have determined regional needs in your consortia, and how together you're planning on bridging those gaps. And also, if the principles of Love and Logic strategy resonated with you as practitioners, I'd love to hear your ideas on how you think Love and Logic model or principles could enhance adult education services in your region. And we can definitely come back and take our time discussing your ideas, maybe even after my portion of the presentation. So I think it's okay for us to move on, at least for now. Okay. All right, so the next strategy, Arise, was developed in response to the regional need to provide support for adult learners with autism spectrum disorder who are transitioning from K-12 to further education and workforce. So in collaboration with K-12 practitioners, community college faculty developed the Arise strategy. It's an acronym, so it stands for Academics, Relationships, Independence, Self-Advocacy, and Emotional Health. Arise includes two components. One component is a lab, which is uniquely equipped and staffed to support students with ASD. It is a center where students can receive one-on-one and small group assistance with academics, communication skills, and interpersonal relationships, among many other things. The scheduling is flexible. It's a drop-in sort of model, so students can stop by and receive assistance in real time. The second component of the ARISE strategy is professional development training for K-12 and community college staff and faculty on the best and promising practices of accommodating students with autism. The ARISE lab, and the photo of the lab you can see on your slide, is located at the Anaheim campus of the School of Continuing Education. It is our largest center, serving about 10,000 students on any given year. We have selected the center again because of its size, but we are working on replicating the elements of ARISE at other consortium sites by offering counseling support for transitional students at our K-12 sites and equipping mini ARISE labs at other SCE centers. Similar to Love and Logic, it sure took many partners contributing to make ARISE possible. Community College District used general funds to finance a full-time lead counselor position and to outfit the ARISE lab. AEBG funds were used to cover a classified instructional assistant position and part-time professional experts who will deliver selected components of ARISE at other consortium sites. K-12 members refer students to the ARISE Center and coordinate transition nights where the ARISE strategy is introduced. So as you can see, we braided physical resources, human resources, funding, and also various functions and activities, all leading to the success of the ARISE strategy. Recently, the ARISE students toured our sister institution, the Cypress College Culinary Art Department, where they were introduced to the jobs in the hospitality industry and, of course, treated to a delicious lunch prepared by students. It's time again to hear from our participants. I realize it's probably a lot of information all at once, so I will wait to hear your ideas and comments. And meanwhile, we'll move on to the next slide. Oh, someone is typing. Okay. All right, looks like multiple attendees are typing, so let's see. All right, so there is an interest in leveraging community college general funds with AEBG funds. It's a great question. Under the recent revision of the definition of the AEBG student is considered to be any student in adult education and non-credit community college education falling under 7 AEBG covered program areas. So this is definitely your into braiding or incorporating community college resources. Those community colleges that offer non-credit programs in the instructional areas that align with adult education block grants, specifically ESL, citizenship, adults with disabilities, CTE, should be able or should be encouraged, of course, to put the non-credit apportionment dollars on the table as a resource to leverage resources for the consortium. If community colleges happen not to have non-credit programs or have very limited or small non-credit programs, then a way to tap into other resources would be to inquire about student success and support program, strong workforce program, and student equity program, as well as basic skills initiative. All these categorical or grant programs serve similar needs and function in similar ways as AEBG funds. So there's definitely an opportunity for braiding. Let's see. Well, thank you for your comment, Laura. Yes, ARISE includes self-advocacy and emotional health. And like I said, the health is real time. Sometimes our students experience difficult days when it comes to communicating with others or maintaining relationships. So they can actually come in and meet with an advisor, a counselor, or a peer mentor and maybe get some tips. Okay. Successful resource braiding. As we all know, it takes a village, or in AEBG terms, a region, to plan and implement comprehensive adult education. And I would even say that resource braiding is not the goal in itself, but rather a natural outcome of a successful partnership. And this is how it works at North Orange County Regional Consortium. We get together to identify regional gaps and define mutual goals. In fact, the more partners are involved in this step, the better, because it ensures an in-depth regional evaluation of needs and hopefully a buy-in from a broad range of partners within the region, which in itself could lead to future outreach for potential participants in the strategies and also in the availability of additional resources. Just going back to one of the participants' questions, sometimes just hearing about opportunities within the region, agencies would volunteer their resources. Maybe they just were not aware of the programs that would have a potential for braiding. In fact, the photo on this slide was taken at our consortium's regional annual partners breakfast, which in a matter of 3 years actually grew from about 50 to 150 participants, representing at least 40 different organizations within our region. And once the goals have been identified, the steps and the resources to reach these goals should be determined. The types of the resources contributed by various partners, of course, will vary. It may be a space for a class or transportation, an internship site, hospitality, but of course everything helps. All are welcome to contribute. But ultimately, all these resources and all the partners' contributions should lead to one goal, which is the success of the selected adult education strategy when we are talking about AEBG fund braiding. And finally, an effective way of evaluating whether we are reaching our goal of serving more students and in a more comprehensive manner would be to develop effectiveness metrics that would be specific to the strategies that were selected for the regional plan. And an effective way to breaking down silos and barriers is to always think students first. Well, this concludes my portion of the webinar. Thank you very much for your time and especially for your insights. I'd love to hear more of your comments or questions, so please use my contact information on this screen to reach me. Thank you again.
Thank you, Valentina. It was great to hear those examples from your program, two models that have worked successfully to leverage resources. I do encourage the participants to reach out to Valentina so that you can learn more about how those programs work. I'm going to now introduce Steve Curiel, who is the principal at Huntington Beach Adult School, and he's also going to share his experiences with leveraging resources and some examples in his K-12 adult school environment. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say thanks for joining us. I think this topic is timely, and I was honored to be able to share some of my thoughts and some of the things that we do here at the Adult School in Huntington Beach. where even here it's extremely hot and I'm glad I'm inside in an office presenting. So when you think of leveraging, ultimately you're thinking about students and outcomes, as Valentina and Alex were explaining earlier. I take it at a very simple, I start with a very simple perspective. What should it look like for students? What's their experience when we're talking about leveraging? So they should ultimately see increased services and support. That could be child care services, could be new locations of classes that are closer to where they live, transportation support, a variety of things. I mean, it's really up to you and your imagination and whoever you can get to partner with to provide the students with services that they need. Ultimately, keeping in mind that it's the student that should drive what services you're delivering. They shouldn't know that there's these leveraging of resources. They don't really care. They're just looking for the resources and the support to get through whatever program, to reach whatever goal they have. So it should be, for them, a transparent process. They just know they're getting child care, for example. It doesn't matter where it comes from. All that is happening, as Alex had explained, at the front door in the registration and intake. You're determining the eligibility just by getting some information from them. We try to avoid having them fill out multiple forms with the same information. We just want to ask them for their name and their phone number, birthday just one time, and from there we do all the back end to figure out what benefits they qualify for. And it should mean better success for your students. Outcome driven, they should feel that they're progressing. Your staff should see that there are more students being successful, and obviously less dropping out. An inverse look at that, tracking how many students have dropped out in the past, and with these new services, childcare, transportation, closer locations, you should also see a drop in the number of students that are dropping out of your program. So for the very simple perspective from the students, then what about for the what should it look like for your partners, that including yourself? So as referenced before, no silos. You start kind of looking at each other's programs, understanding each other's programs. The idea of leveraging is it's a win-win for all partners. It should make things easier for partners. Otherwise, why would you leverage? Why would you work together? You should start seeing an eagerness to work together. And some of the examples that were explained earlier, given earlier, and some of the questions you asked, how do you approach partners? Well, it's that initial conversation. It's seeing opportunities where obviously you're going to benefit, your students are going to benefit, the partners that are engaging are going to see potential benefits and opportunities for their outcomes, for the goals that they have in mind. And so there should be this eagerness once you start talking to each other, once you start having those conversations about what it is you do and how you're driven. And there should be improved outcomes for all partners. That is, either you have more student enrollment, you have higher success rates, partners are seeing more students served. Maybe where you're decreasing the poverty in a certain area by getting students jobs, or you're seeing increased literacy levels, which is a common goal for an adult school program and maybe some other partners. So ultimately, everyone is seeing an improvement in outcomes that are important to them. And I can't stress that enough. That's just really understanding what your partners are in it for, and looking for those commonalities, those common goals. What does it look like at HBAS here in our program? So we have a number of partners that we have had over the years, even before AEBG. And I think most of you have some community partners as well. We here at Huntington Beach Adult School, we leverage our WIOA funds, our Title II funds. We also work with our one-stops that use Title I funding to help pay for some of the costs of our CTE programs for our students / their clients. We receive CalWORKS funding. We obviously receive our ABG dollars. We also partner with our community colleges who are using both a combination ABG dollars and other sources of funds to help build transitions and pipelines from our program into their program. And we've had a number of community-based organizations that work with us, churches, Boys and Girls Club, Dress for Success. There's a lot of community partners that have been working with us over the years and continue to work with us. There's a short list of them. For our staff, the resources that aren't only benefiting our students, but some of our staff qualify for professional development opportunities, maybe from a partner who's got an area of expertise. For example, if they do training in computers, Excel, for example, and some of our community colleges have offered our staff to attend some of their advanced Excel programs or Cisco training. Cisco is a new program for us, so we partnered in that way. And then also with WIOA fundings, WIOA Title II funding, we use that to help in professional develop our staff to make sure they're giving the best instruction. Facilities, we have a number of partners that give us facilities free rent. For the most part, some of them do ask for some utilities costs, but definitely we're able to spread out and offer classes that are closer to students where they live and where they reside, where they do most of their community work and schooling with their kids. These partners have been fundamental in helping us meet the demand of our students, because in all honesty, our district by itself and the facilities we have not been, we haven't been able to serve the needs. So our other partners, as in churches, churches, elementary school districts, have provided us a ton of facilities to use and provide classes. Student impact for our students, we're able to provide what we call financial aid or financial assistance. That's the term we use. We actually use CalWORKS funding or just do fee waivers with our own budgeting. We allocate a certain amount of funds that we will just call or consider financial assistance. We're able to provide more support materials for our students, whether it's one example, we've purchased planners that help students schedule out their week and make sure they've got their classes scheduled and their homework scheduled, and so that's been very successful. We do buy a lot of technology. We want to make sure our students are learning the skills they need to not only apply for a job, because as you know, many jobs are now requiring online applications, but then also as well being able to keep a job if it does require those technical skills. We provide childcare at a number of locations, and I think the biggest thing that we leverage our partners with is classes that are closer to where the students live. As you know, many of our students, if it involves more than so many miles away from their home, that becomes a barrier, and so we do make sure we try to be as close to our students as possible. One of our examples that I inherited, I'm not going to take credit for building this program. This was here when I came to Huntington Beach, and it's called the Twilight Program. And if you can imagine school buses, I think there's about 14 of them that travel around the Huntington Beach Union High School District, which includes Westminster, Huntington Beach, Mountain Valley, travels around that whole area, those whole cities, and in certain areas where typically you'll find high-density apartments, you'll find a high English learner population. They come in with the buses and pick up families, and it has to be a family, it has to be a parent with a K-12 student or a toddler even. It's just they've got to have a child with them. And the buses all meet at Golden West College. They congregate there right around 6:30 in the evening, and parents and kids are coming off, and they're just, kids go one direction and head out for tutoring, and then they get some snacks with that, and then the parents head out to the other classrooms there at Golden West, and they've received receive ESL instruction as well as parent education for their kids. So really an awesome program. It's 3 nights a week, and it's been done for, we've been doing it for about 10 years now. So how does that work? What are we leveraging? So the partners that we have involved are ourselves, Boys and Girls Club, our local elementary school districts, which there are 3, I think all 4 currently signed on onto the MOU to provide some kind of support. And then we have Golden West College. And so we're providing the ESL instruction, and from this partnership we're benefiting. That's probably our highest performing program in terms of learning gains from students. You can probably understand why, because it's probably the most supportive atmosphere or environment for not only our students but also for the kids, and it's just an amazing success story there. Boys and Girls Club, they're pretty much almost the backbone of this. They're the ones that provide the buses. They provide the tutors for the tutoring of the K-12 kids. They provide childcare for those children that are not school-aged, and then they also are able to provide snacks and school supplies. They bought backpacks through certain donations they received. They do obviously a lot of leveraging of other fund sources themselves. They're constantly looking for grants, and then they feed those grants and resources back into the Twilight program. And they're looking for just more outcomes. How many students are they serving? How many kids are being served? What are they? What kind of grades are they getting? All that is data they use to generate more funds to help support the program, and actually apply for other programs that they offer within their area of service. Our local elementary districts provide the parent education. They each have someone whose responsibility is to provide that, and they just saw a perfect opportunity to come in and get a large group of parents along with kids when they want the kids involved, and provide education. And typically, and what they've said, it's a difficult group to reach. Our parents of the Yale populations, but the fact that they're all there, they've been bused to one location, it makes it very easy for them to reach out to them. They also provide nurses to do health screenings for some of the kids, especially the kids that are just entering, so they can kind of have an idea where kids are before they enter their whichever K-12 or K through 8 school district they're going into. And Golden West College provides the classrooms, and that's even at a time when space is limited. They're going through a lot of modernization and building new buildings, and so it's a constant shift of classrooms, but they've always managed to find us a place for ESL students, typically about 3 classrooms, and then about 4 classrooms for tutoring for the school-age children. And so they've been very supportive that way, and it's an awesome way for them to promote their college in the area for students who are coming in from all the different cities, where they have other options for colleges as well. But Golden West has been supportive in that way. A question for us. So after hearing some of these services, what are some services that you would like to provide your students? And who's out there in the community who delivers those services you might not have thought of or are thinking of reaching out to and trying to find those common goals, common focus areas, so that both partners or multiple partners can benefit. So I'll wait a few minutes. I'm really stealing ideas here. No shame in that game. I love to hear from others to see what they're thinking and who's out there that they're partnering with. Correct, yes. There was a question about how many nights. It's 3 nights a week. Tuesday through Thursday, and the cost, I wish I knew I should have looked at the cost, but I know summer we have to reduce down to 2 nights if we're even able to offer it. We weren't able to offer it this last summer, but typically we will run the program through summer, which for us is mid-June through July, end of July, just to keep that, keep it going. As you know, a big break is tough to recover from some of the families who break the routine, and then they're not they forget about us quickly. So yeah, Diana, yeah, I'm happy it's still going on. That's been a core of our ESL program for many years. So that's a cherished program. So yeah, let's see here. So Suzanne, considering housing agency here on campus that supports not only students but the community as well. Wow, that is awesome. That is another area that we keep hearing about, and I would love to hear how that goes. That's a barrier for many of our students, challenges that they have. So that would be great if you could reach out to them. And Carrick is child care is always challenged. What organizations are other consortia partnering with to provide child care? Catholic Charities, Boys and Girls Club. They are somewhat, I would say, experts in that area. There's a lot of Boys and Girls Clubs in this area. They have the ability to serve. It's just they need to find the funds to offer child care, especially in the evening. I would imagine their staff becomes available in the evening, but they've got the infrastructure. They know all the licensing requirements. So Boys and Girls Club, Catholic Charities, YMCA. We don't have a YMCA that I know of serves this area, but Boys and Girls Club is dominant. So other areas, and I've talked to other administrators, they have YMCAs that they were looking at approaching. Especially now if there's ABG funds that are available, or for us, we've had funds to offer child care. It's just sometimes hard to get the child care providers. Boys and Girls Club is limited to staying within the Huntington Beach City footprint boundary. So out in Westminster, we partner with the elementary school districts, and they provide the child care, and we split the cost for that. And so that's been very helpful. And there was a time when there was CBET funds that they had access to. Those have been swept, but some of the districts have still continued to do that. The city owes private support services like food banks. Yes, food banks, connecting with them. We have reached out to them, and it's just, well, let me go with the questions back to the PowerPoint, but food banks, those other areas that we've been curious about, so let me know how that goes. So some of the challenges that we are facing or are constantly having to deal with is building and maintaining that relationship. And it really does come back to that relationship, be it between partners, among partners, so that they're willingly coming to the table, willingly sharing their resource, talking about what it is they can support your students with. That just takes time, and it takes time to build trust. There is, whenever you're talking about money, there's always a suspicion that comes with that, and so you have to build a trust and put the time into it. I know we're all busy, but many of those meetings, community meetings, Chamber of Commerce meetings, in many ways have to be near the top of the list, because that's how you're going to be able to make the connections to find out what opportunities are out there, and then build that leveraging that we're identifying that we need. And tracking and reporting leverage funds accurately, that can be challenging, as Alex had explained earlier. If you don't have a financial system that can do that well, that would be an area you might want to focus and talk to your district and see if it's possible to get a better system. Dispelling myths about what you can and can't do with each other's funds. Sometimes, and this is where it gets a little tricky, I've had to research fund sources that I don't have access to that other partners do. And after that relationship is built, after the trust is built, see if we can look at other ways of where the funds can be used, because sometimes you just inherit something and you operate it and use the funds the way that they've always been using it. And if you can point out to them that there is a way for them to help you out that they haven't thought of before, then that's something that can be challenging and not interrupting the trust there. Okay, so we're going to skip because I think we're out of time. The last question, but here are some tips. Not an option. Leveraging is not an option. It's expected from us, especially in AEBG. Like I said, it's timely that this PowerPoint or this presentation is being held as we are all, or many of us are submitting our AEBG, or working our AEBG, and there's questions about leveraging, how we're leveraging funds. It starts with a conversation. You got to talk about what it is you guys consider is important. Listen to what it is that your partner, who you're wanting to partner with, what they consider important, what they need in terms of outcomes, and look for ways you can deliver that. And recognize it takes time. Take baby steps. You don't have to build a program right away. It's just getting that relationship going. Start with something small and then build on that. So here are some other areas. If you're looking for partners, workforce boards, WIO plans, regional plans, you can see a lot of different people involved in these already. AEBG fact sheet has your fund sources already laid out, so you understand, at least in terms of funding, what other partners are getting. Strong workforce plans have a lot of built-in collaboration there with various partners, and so if you're not involved in those, then those are areas you might want to look at. And that's my contact info, and I will give it back to Cherise so we can finish on time.
All right. Thank you, Steve. I know this is a very exciting workshop or webinar when you get to share some of the examples from your own programs, and so I really appreciate what you shared, Steve, and Valentina as well. They were real examples showing how leveraging resources can work and support the overview that Alex shared with us early on. It is the end of our webinar today, and we are at 2:30 exactly, and so I want to let you know that we have evaluation that you will be receiving as soon as the webinar is done. And then we have a couple of chat pods up here that we want you to help us with, especially the one that's in the center of your screen that says, what from today's session might you consider applying, and then also to share with us any questions and comments that you have, but especially in that comments chat to let us know what other topics and areas of interest that you have as well for future professional development, webinar, and training opportunities. We want to remind you that you can find all of the professional development opportunities at the aebg.org website, and if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts to share in the chat pods, please do. You can download the presentations here on the bottom where it says handouts. Those are available for you to download. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your afternoon and a great rest of your week. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Valentina. And Sudi, thank you as well.